Hello everyone. So in this video we are going to continue our discussion about population ecology. So if you remember in the previous videos we have mentioned that population ecology is involved with studying the dispersion, is involved with studying the density and also population size. So population size is usually described by demographics. So demography is the study of the vital statistics of the population and how they change with time. So it's studying the rates. So two rates that demographers are usually interested in are the birth rate and the death rates. So it has some relationship with statistics. That's why we are going to use mathematical equations, but don't worry, it is not difficult mathematics. It's a very easy ones. So usually the data of demography are summarized in what we call life tables. So they summarize the probability of an individual that will survive and reproduce at a given time. So as you can see here, we have one of these life tables. It is for the building's ground square, and here we are showing the different age categories and comparing the number of or the death rate in females and the death rate in males. So what I want you to pay attention to is the death rate is nearly equal in males and females. So this is the first thing. Number two, the death rate is more or less the same with the different age categories. So here 0.61 from 0 to 1 year, 0.5 from 1 to 2, 0.47, 0.48, 0.46, 0.53. So more or less the same death rate with a different age. Yes, at the very old age, the death rate increases a little bit, but at least up to 7 years, it is more or less like the same death rate. So as you can see, all this information were summarized in the life table, and this is one way that the demographers will use to show how the population, vital statistics of the population changes with time. So two concepts that we are going to highlight include the survivorship. So survivorship is the proportion of offspring produced that survive to a particular time, and as you can see, this is the average of the population. And also we have what is known as fecundity. So fecundity is the number of offspring produced by each female in the population. So there is actually a trade-off between survivorship and fecundity. So when we have high fecundity, there is low survivorship, and when we have low fecundity, we have high survivorship. So let's imagine the case with frogs or fishes. So they tend to lay a lot of eggs. So we have high fecundity. So remember, fecundity is the number of offspring produced by each female in the population. So each female, in case of fishes and frogs, it produces a lot of eggs, so high fecundity rate, but these eggs are usually very prone to predators, so they will not survive. So the majority of these eggs may not survive, so we have low survivorship. On the other hand, let's say in case of us human, we have low fecundity, so the number of offspring produced by each female in case of us human is much less than what we can see in frogs or fishes, but we have higher survivorship compared to the frogs or fishes. Moving on, so we can show this data using survivorship curve. So it's a graphical way of representing the data in a life table, and we have already shown the life table of the building's ground squirrels, and it shows a relatively constant death rate. If you remember, or if you can go back to the table, you will find that the death rate is more or less the same, and it is again more or less the same rate in females and males. So because of that, it is like a straight line, and we call this type, this is the third type of survivorship curve, because we actually have three types of survivorship curves. Type 1 is characterized by having low death rates during the early and middle life, then an increase among the older age groups. Then type 2, the death rate is constant over the organism's lifespan. Type 3, we see high death rates for the young, then a slower death rate for the survivors. So let's move on to show this data in this figure. So the survivorship rate for us as a human, the survivorship rate is high during the early stages of life. Then as we grow up, this survivorship curve goes down. In case of the squirrels, as we have seen, it is more or less a straight line, and we call this type 2 survivorship curve. So the third type of survivorship curve, we see low survivorship with lower age. Then the survivorship rates increases as the age increase. We can think of that as we said, the eggs of fish or frogs, or even with trees we see the same pattern. So the ability of a seedling to survive will be much less than a mature tree. So a seedling can be easily eaten by animals, so the percentage of survivors will be much less. That's why at the very early stage of life it is almost reaching zero, so the line is like zero. Then it increases a little bit, and as the organism's age increase, we have a full tree. Now the survivorship is much higher. It is the opposite for us human, because we show type 1 survivorship curve. Things like squirrels, like birds, they show a straight line that doesn't change much with age. So we have type 2 survivorship curve.